you are involved with something cool that's about to happen relatively soon. But I would love you to share about what's going on out in Idaho. The cool thing that you guys are putting out out there. That the convention that's coming up soon.
Yeah, that sort of just fell in my lap. I had Brandon Hoffheinz from Squatch Nut reached out to me months and months ago, and we were going back and forth about some other things, and he had some encounters, so I invited him on the show. He came on the show, shared his encounters. Great dude, just super high energy. I just immediately was drawn to his stories, and we started talking, and he was really looking forward to putting together a Bigfoot conference in Idaho. And he reached out to me. We kicked around some ideas, and he just started running with it. And the next thing I know, he calls me up and he says, "Hey, I've got Dr. Jeff Meldrum. He's committed to coming out. Cliff Bergman's coming out. I'd love to have you on the panel. Would you come out and speak at the conference?" And I'm like, "Sure, man. Absolutely. Let's make it happen." And I had been trying, for those that do listen to my show, I've been chasing my tail and herding cats for probably 5 months now. I've been trying to do a roundtable discussion on the enhanced, non-interlaced version of this Freeman footage from 1992. So I'm sure most people who listen to your show are very educated in Bigfoot. You do a very good job with that, Jeremiah. But for those that don't know what the Freeman footage is all about, it's basically Paul Freeman. He was a pretty prolific Bigfoot investigator back in the late 80s, early 90s, through the 2000s, really, before he passed away. And he's a kind of a controversial figure in Bigfoot. As I dug into his history and dug into things, I sort of figured this out, because if you talk about footage and possible proof of the species, the Patterson-Gimlin film is usually number one in everybody's mind. And normally it's the Freeman footage right there at number two, right? So it's a pretty big deal. But in a nutshell, this guy's basically out doing his thing, and he films what looks like a Bigfoot crossing over this path. And everybody famously, the famous line that most people recognize is, "Oh, there he goes."
Yeah.
Right. So it's very grainy. I mean, it was on 8mm video in 1992. So if you've been around long enough to put your mind back in 1992 and think about what grainy video looks like back then, that's what you're going to get with the Freeman footage. So almost immediately after this footage came out, Doug Hychek started looking at it. He started digging into it, and he was working his tail off to try to enhance this footage, because in part of the footage, and Doug just talked about this on Saturday on my show, if you listen to the footage carefully, you hear Paul say at one time, "Oh, there's more than one of them." Mm-hmm. So he can see with his naked eye that there's more than one of these creatures there. You just can't make it out in the film. So that was just digging into Doug's skin. If you know Doug well enough to know,
oh yeah,
he's going to start digging, and he's not going to stop until he gets what he wants. So that's what he did. And he worked on this for basically 20 years. He eventually had to go to the government, to the military, to get some software to really enhance this footage, do the non-interlacing, and make it so he could actually see what he was wanting to see. And of course, he made a discovery of what's now famously called the baby lift, or the baby Bigfoot that's in the footage. So Cliff's also been working on it. Cliff has done his own sort of version of cleaning up the film and done some work to get it a little bit farther along, just like Doug has. But recently, within the last year, Michael Freeman, Paul Freeman's son, wrote the book, The Freeman Files. And as a part of that, you got to see this footage along with I think it's 10 plus hours of audio that Paul recorded over the course of his life out researching. And that's all a part of the book as well. But what I was going to do, or wanted to do, I reached out to Michael, I reached out to Doug, and I said, "Hey, I'd like to get, Cliff Bergman was on board. Cliff was going to come back on the show. I was going to have Doug on, Michael Freeman. I was going to get Dr. Russ Jones on. And we were going to kind of release some of the footage on the show and then have a roundtable." But just like you and I were talking before we went live here, it is almost impossible to get a lot of schedules lined up. And you're talking 5 or so people with that kind of schedule. It's been really tough. Every time I'd send out an email, I'd shoot people text messages and say, "Hey, I've got these 5 days lined up over the next week. Can you guys make it?" There was always somebody. It was Michael saying, "Oh, I can't do it." Or Cliff's like, "Oh, sorry, I'll be out of town." So I thought a little light bulb went off in my head when Brandon reached out to me and said, hey, I'm going to have Dr. Jeff Meldrum's going to be there. Cliff Bergman's going to be there. You're going to be there. Thinking, okay, well, what two better people to have a conversation with about the Freeman footage than those two? Let's reach out to Michael Freeman. So I shot him a text and said, hey, man, this thing's coming up. You think you'd be interested? He tried to work out his schedule. Okay, boom, he's on board. So now we've got Michael coming. So then I reached out to Doug and said, hey, man, can you come? And he's like, unfortunately, I will be, 55 miles deep in the woods that weekend. But hey, why don't I send Alex up there and I'll send part of our crew from Legend Meets Science 2 to film the thing. And so I won't be there, but I'll send those guys. And I'm like, okay, well, that'll work. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. And then I had another idea. I said to Brandon, this is kind of historic, dude. Like, very few people have ever seen this non-interlaced, enhanced, slowed down version of this film that's so crystal clear. Why don't we work with Doug and Alex and those guys? And why don't we figure out if there's a way to make this conference available virtually? Like, if people want to attend virtually, they can get a link and they can see the video. They can hear us break it down. They can hear us talk about it. They can be involved in the situation and they won't have to travel to Idaho. It's like 2,000 miles for me. So I know it's a tough trek for a lot of people to get there, right? And he's like, that's a brilliant idea. So we got with Doug, Alex, and Blaine, and those guys, and they're fantastic. So anything they set their mind to, they get it done. And we just rolled it out. I had Doug and Brandon on Saturday. I just released it. The show came out yesterday. But we sort of rolled out the announcement. Doug put together a cool intro. It's about a minute long that sort of describes what's happening. It's kind of a trailer, if you will, for the upcoming conference. So that was a really long answer to say. It's a really cool conference. If you could be there in person, we obviously want you to be there in person. But if you can't, you have the ability to see it virtually. And all you got to do is go on. And Doug has different packages. It's hangar1publishing.com. You can go over there and it's right there on the homepage. And I think the lowest package is $19.95. So you can literally be a part of this for less than $20. See the footage, be a part of the roundtable, and really, in my opinion, be a part of history. I'm shocked that more people aren't talking about what's going on with the Freeman footage, the enhancements, and so hopefully we'll stir up a little interest. And if people are interested in it, they can attend it virtually. So I don't know if it's ever been done, honestly. I know they've probably done some virtual conferences. I think you're actually involved in one that's coming up that I saw something about online recently, but
yes, it's like, am I? Yes, I am.
I do my homework, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm Ryan Sprague is putting that on Anomicon. It's going to be a good one. Yeah, I'm excited.
But as far as Bigfoot, I've never seen it done. I've been to a couple of conferences. I've attended a couple of conferences. I've spoken at a couple of conferences already this year. And I've not seen anybody that's done anything virtual like that allows people to actually be a part of what the speakers are doing on stage in real time that I'm aware of. I could be wrong.
I mean, it raises the bar for, imagine if all Bigfoot conferences, like in, the Ohio Bigfoot conference, the big guys, like if they could do the same thing, it'd be fantastic. And I mean, for the cost, such a low cost, like $19.99, I mean, it's a no-brainer that you want to be involved with seeing what's going on. So is this going to be the best ever footage of the Freeman footage then? Like, this is the best you're ever going to see it.
Oh, hands down. There's no way it's ever going to get any better. It is phenomenal. The first time I saw it, Michael sent it to me after I had him on the show, and I pulled it up on my computer and my jaw dropped because it's so freaking clear. There's no, even to this day when I watch the Patty Fair, and I've recently changed my opinion on that too. So we can talk a little bit about that if you want, but I've seen that so many times and there's this little tickle in the back goes, oh, I'm just not 100% there. But after I had the conversation with Michael and I saw this enhanced version of the film, I was 100% convinced. You're not going to convince me otherwise that that's not a Sasquatch and that's not a baby that's picking up off that tree. Just not going to happen.
Wow. Don't you get a copy of the Freeman Bigfoot files? That's one of the tiers with this as well.
Yes, you get an ebook. Yes, you get the book with everything. So you can literally read the book and look in and see what Paul was doing in his research. and you can hear things in his own words. You can hear him talking. His audio diary is there, and it's amazing. I mean, the book itself is like $70 if you buy it by itself, but as a part of one of the tiers that you can attend this conference virtually, you can get a copy of the ebook and get access to all of that in perpetuity. Forever, it's yours. So
when I was reading through that and listening to everything before, I had Michael Freeman on Bigfoot Society a while back. I just remember listening to all the Paul Freeman audio clips, and it's like you're literally listening to the Paul Freeman podcast is pretty much what it is. And it is, but you really get to like know how he is as like what his character is. It's fascinating. Like people, you know, watch the conference live. Also, you get the book, and the book is so worth reading. Michael did a great job with that. So I'm excited that you guys are putting this together, that the High Checks figured out how to make it all, the tech wizard stuff. Very, very cool.